This is a City Lights Publications production. The shadows stir, and the hunt begins. You are listening to The Shadow Demon Velrathran Bounty, written by S. Baggley. A short story born from the world of the Shadow Demon, a realm where darkness whispers, blades gleam, and every choice carries the weight of survival. Now step into the shadows, and let the story claim you. The Shadow Demon Velrathran Bounty. Kai sat in the restaurant of the village inn, a solitary figure at a rough-hewn table. The place was little more than a mud-brick hall with a roof of woven reeds, yet it carried the pretense of hospitality. A few lanterns hung from the beams, their flames guttering in the draught, and the air was thick with the mingled sense of spice, sweat, and the faint tang of desert dust. The village itself lay on the planet Velrath, a world ruled not by kings or councils but by sorcerers. 5 of them, known across the continents as the Great Five, held dominion over their respective realms. Their rivalries had left the planet in a perpetual state of war. Armies marched, cities burned, and the common people lived in constant dread of annihilation. A careless gesture from one of those mighty hands could erase a town, a valley, or a nation. Velrath was not ignorant of the wider universe. Its people knew of the Axis gods, the ether, and the champions who bore the mark of that higher power. They knew of the endless struggles fought across realms, where chosen warriors carried the honor of entire worlds. And they knew, too, of Kai, though few recognized him by sight. To most, he was a rumor, a shadow whispered of in taverns and temples. To some, he was a nightmare. Kai looked down at the food before him. It was a poor affair, a bowl of half soup, half mush, served with a crude spoon-shaped utensil. The table was scarred and uneven, the crockery chipped. Yet the flavor surprised him. The dish was rich with spice, warming the palate with a subtle heat. He had eaten most of it, though hunger was not what had brought him here. Dining was an excuse, a way to observe the village and its people without drawing attention. The inn doubled as a hotel, and he intended to stay the night. He raised his eyes to the street beyond the open shutters. It was late afternoon, the heat of the desert tempered by a cool breeze. The village was a cluster of square mud huts, larger than they appeared from a distance, their walls thick to keep out the sun. There were no motorized vehicles, no machines of any kind. Technology that might rival sorcery had long been outlawed. Instead, the people relied on beasts of burden, hulking creatures with broad chests and patient eyes, to carry them along the dusty roads. The street outside was alive with noise. A market was in full swing, stalls crowded with goods. Strange artworks, bundles of herbs, hides of animals unfamiliar to Kai. Buyers and sellers haggled with fierce energy, their voices rising above the clamor. Children darted between the stalls, laughing, while old men sat in the shade, smoking pipes that gave off a bitter, resinous scent. Kai studied them with the detached eye of a traveler. This world was mad, he thought. Mad, and yet no different from others he had seen. Always the same pattern, war above, life below. The people carried on, bartering, laughing, living, even as the threat of destruction hung over them. Perhaps, he mused, when one has lived too long in the shadow of death, one ceases to fear it. He would be here for a week, no less. His oracle had spoken, and the prophecy was clear. Until the appointed time, he must wait. Yet the thought of a sudden magical strike, fire from the skies, or the ground opening to swallow the village, never left his mind. He lifted his gaze to the heavens. There, the scars of war were plain. The atmosphere shimmered with ether, the raw magic of the universe. Fragments of the planet itself floated in the sky, drifting like slow balloons. Sometimes whole chunks of mountain hovered above villages, casting ominous shadows. Now and then, a boulder would break free, plummeting to earth with a thunderous crash. At night, the ether glowed like an aurora, a beauty born of ruin. As Kai watched the market, he did not see the figure watching him. A cloaked man stood in the shadows, his face hidden beneath a hood. Beneath that hood was a mask, polished like chrome, carved with the features of a flawless god. Only the small holes for nose and mouth betrayed its function. This perfection was unsettling, its stillness inhuman. Kai's reverie was broken by the approach of the inn's owner. She was tall, her hair tied back in a long braid that reached her hips. She wore loose robes of pale cloth, and around her neck hung a dozen necklaces, each a sign of wealth. Her skin was brown, but her cheeks and eyes were flecked with scales that shimmered in rainbow hues. By Velrathran standards, she was beautiful. "Can I get you anything else?" she asked in the local dialect. Kai understood enough. He was not fluent, but he could draw upon the demon's memories when needed. It was a dangerous practice. Each time he touched that well, he risked giving the creature within him more ground, but it was sometimes necessary. "I'm good, thank you," he replied. Then, after a pause, he added, "I have the mark." He opened his shirt to reveal the symbol on his shoulder. An eye, etched into his flesh like a cross between tattoo and birthmark. "I was told champions are honored here, but if you require payment, I have jewels." The woman stared at the mark. She had grown up with tales of the Ether champions, warriors chosen by gods to fight for worlds. Velrath had its own champions, though they were seldom called upon. No one wished to conquer this cursed planet. "Which world do you protect?" she asked. "I am champion for the demon realm." Her eyes widened. "Ah, then you are not truly a traveler." "I am forever a traveler," Kai said, his voice flat. She nodded, clearing his table. "There are no charges for champions. May the gods favor you." "Thank you. I also require a room for the night." She hesitated. He could see the doubt in her eyes. Did she want a demon-possessed foreigner under her roof? She looked into his gaze, searching for a soul. What she saw was Kai's human torment, and it eased her fear. "We have a room," she said at last. "I'll fetch the key." He smiled faintly. "Thank you." As she turned away, a memory stirred in her mind. An old story told in childhood of a champion unlike the others. A shadow, a demon. She froze, then turned back. "Are you the shadow demon?" Kai stiffened. He had not expected her to know. Fear rippled through him, not for himself, but for what might awaken within. "I am," he said quietly. "I strongly advise you tell no one of my presence." She paled, then nodded, retreating into the inn. Kai considered leaving. The demon preferred anonymity. If the woman spoke, it could bring trouble. But for now, he stayed. His room was basic. A bed, a table, a wardrobe. The bathroom was primitive, with no hot water and a squat toilet. The only luxury was a balcony, reached through French-style doors. He stepped outside, scanning the street below. The market was closing, stalls packed away, voices fading. He checked the balconies above and below, noting the vulnerabilities. The doors had no lock. He returned inside, sat cross-legged in the center of the room, and drew a dagger from his sash. The blade was ancient, folded steel etched with alien runes. The handle was long, wrapped in cord, separated from the blade by a thin guard. In some cultures, such a weapon was used for ritual suicide. For the shadow demon, it was a tool of precision. He placed it before him, closed his eyes, and began to breathe. Meditation was his shield. Over the years, he had learned to fortify his mind against the demon's influence. He could sit for hours, still as stone, while the world moved around him. The sun set. Darkness filled the room. He did not stir until a gentle knock came at the door. Kai rose from his meditation and crossed the room to the door. The knock had been soft, almost hesitant, and when he opened it, the innkeeper stood there, her earlier composure gone. The confidence she had shown when she first confronted him about his identity had drained away. Now her eyes betrayed fear, and her hands twisted nervously in the folds of her robe. "I'm heading in for the night," she said, her voice low. "I just wanted to check if there was anything you needed." Kai tried to soften his expression, to offer her something resembling reassurance. He managed a faint smile. "Thank you. I'm fine. I'll see you in the morning." She nodded quickly, avoiding his gaze. "Very well. Good night." She hesitated, then added, "I just wanted you to know there is only one other customer in the hotel. He is on the first floor with me, and I have known him a long time." "Thank you," Kai said. He appreciated the information, though he could not promise it would matter. The demon within him had no regard for innocence or familiarity. If it judged the innkeeper or her guest a threat, it would act without hesitation. He closed the door and stood still, listening. The silence pressed in, broken only by the faint creak of the building settling. Yet he felt it, the prickling sensation of eyes upon him. He did not react at once. Instead, he turned slowly, scanning the room. Nothing. He crossed to the balcony doors and opened them, letting the cool night air spill into the room. He did not step outside. Instead, he paused at the threshold, tasting the air, analyzing the silence. Something was wrong. He stepped back into the shadows of the room. The attack came instantly. A cloaked figure swung into the room from above, striking at the space where Kai should have been. But the room was empty. The intruder landed lightly, scanning the darkness. The cloak fell away, revealing armor of polished chrome. Every plate was finely wrought, gleaming even in the dim light. It was not armor for concealment but for spectacle, a statement of power. The mask was the most unsettling. A flawless face of metal, expressionless, divine in its perfection. It was the face of a god, cold and inhuman. The attacker reached over his shoulder and drew a weapon. At first glance it resembled a folded bow, but with a click it sprang open into a double-ended blade, curved like an S. It was elegant, deadly, and alien. The intruder crouched low, spinning slowly, scanning the room. From the balcony, a figure materialized. Shadows thickened, coalescing into human form. The shadow demon had taken control. Kai's hood was drawn up, his scarf covering his mouth. His eyes glowed white, devoid of pupils, cold and merciless. He stepped forward with deliberate confidence, each stride measured, predatory. On the floor lay his dagger, where he had placed it during meditation. He flicked it into the air with his foot, caught it with a sharp punch of his hand, and held it horizontally before him. He paused, letting the gesture hang in the air like a challenge. The attacker lunged. The double blade sliced diagonally, fast and precise. The demon blocked with his dagger, but the intruder twisted, the lower curve of the weapon cutting upward. The demon deflected again, but the third strike was faster still, and the blade bit into his arm. Blood spattered the floor. The demon stepped back, eyes narrowing. He willed the wound to clot, the dark power within him knitting flesh with unnatural speed. He shifted his stance, reassessing. This was no ordinary assassin. The precision, the speed, this was a trained killer, perhaps even a champion. If the intruder bore the mark of the ether, then their powers would be balanced. Champion against champion, equal by cosmic law. If not, then this was a mortal who had been sent to die. The attacker pressed forward, strikes flowing in a deadly rhythm. The demon blocked, parried, and countered with a low sweep, but the intruder was too fast. The sweep failed, and another cut opened on his arm. Enough! The demon vanished into shadow, slipping beneath the blade. The attacker struck at empty air. A heartbeat later, a boot slammed into his back, hurling him into the table. With splintered crockery shattered, he staggered upright, only to meet a fist crashing into his mask. The impact jarred the demon's knuckles, pain lancing up his arm, but the blow sent the intruder sprawling. The demon pressed the attack, driving a knee into the chrome-plated torso. The impact cracked the clay wall behind, dust and fragments raining down. He tried to kick the weapon from the intruder's grip, but the assassin held fast and countered, tackling him across the room. They crashed into the bed, the frame groaning under the weight. The intruder swung wildly, but the demon vanished again, reappearing with a brutal kick to the side of the mask. The assassin reeled, only to be struck again from another angle. A final kick to the chest sent him crashing into the wall by the door. Below, the innkeeper cowered. She knelt on the floor, staring at the ceiling as the battle raged above. The noise was terrifying. Crashes, thuds, the splintering of wood. She knew what it meant. The shadow demon was fighting. The stories she had heard as a child came flooding back. Tales of a champion who did not fight with honor, who killed from the shadows, who served not the Axis gods but the demon realm. He was a ghost, a nightmare, and now he was here in her inn. Upstairs, the battle raged on. The demon wrenched the weapon from the intruder's grip and hurled it through the balcony doors, sending it clattering into the street below. The assassin did not flinch. Instead, he reached into a pouch and drew a spiked sphere. He pressed a stud, and the orb began to glow, pulsing with energy. He hurled it at the ceiling. The spikes bit into the beam, and a moment later the orb erupted. Light flooded the room, searing, blinding. It was as though a miniature sun had been born. Every shadow vanished. The demon staggered, his power stripped from him, his vision blurred, his connection to the shadows severed. The assassin struck, a kick to the ribs that sent him reeling. Then the intruder moved behind him, pulling a ring on his wrist guard. A cable snapped free, thin and strong, perfect for strangulation. The garrote whipped over the demon's head, tightening around his throat. Instinct saved him. He thrust an arm between the wire and his neck, the cable biting into flesh but sparing his windpipe. The assassin pulled hard, bracing with a knee in the demon's back. The demon rolled, dragging the attacker with him. They crashed to the floor, locked together, the garrote cutting deeper. The assassin's strength was relentless, the pressure unyielding. The demon's vision darkened at the edges. But he was not Kai now. He was the shadow demon, and the shadow demon did not yield. The garrote bit deeper. The demon struggled on his back, his arm wedged between the wire and his throat, but the pressure was relentless. Each breath came shorter, harsher, his chest heaving against the weight of the assassin pressing down. The cable cut into his skin, hot lines of pain shooting down his arm. His vision blurred at the edges, the world narrowing to the masked face above him and the suffocating grip around his neck. With his free hand, he scrabbled at his sash, fingers searching desperately for a weapon. His hand closed around the cool steel of a throwing star. He wrenched it free and drove it upwards, stabbing at the attacker's torso. The star struck armor and skittered off with a metallic clang. He tried again, aiming for the legs, the joints, anywhere unprotected. Nothing. The armor was impenetrable, every plate fitted with precision. His lungs screamed for air. He jabbed at the helmet, the polished chrome face that mocked him with its perfection. Again, nothing. Then his fingers found a weakness, the narrow gap between helmet and gorget, a sliver of exposed flesh. He pushed the blade of the star into the crack, but the angle was wrong. He could not drive it deep enough. His strength was fading, his body weakening under the choke. Kai's human side faltered. How much longer could his body endure? The demon within him gathered itself, coiling like a serpent. He braced, then snapped his head forward with brutal force. The headbutt jarred his skull, but it shifted the assassin's grip just enough. The demon twisted, forcing the star into the gap at the neck. This time the blade bit flesh. The assassin jerked, releasing the garrote to claw at the wound. The demon shoved him away and rolled to his feet, staggering, chest heaving. His throat burned, his arm throbbed, but he was alive. The assassin rose too, pulling the star from his neck. He stared at it for a moment, then tossed it aside. He banged his wrist guards together, and with a hiss of hidden mechanisms, blades snapped out over his fists. Twin knives, short and vicious, gleamed in the dim light. The shadow demon stood before him, calm, almost casual. His white eyes betrayed no fear. The assassin lunged, but his movements were slower now, less precise. The poison was working. The star's edge had been laced with venom, subtle and cruel. Each heartbeat carried it deeper into his blood. The demon caught the blade fist easily, twisting the assassin's arm aside. He could feel the strength draining from his opponent. Not from fatigue, but from the poison. The fight was already over. With a swift motion, the demon seized the garrote cable, still dangling from the assassin's wrist. He looped it around the man's neck and pulled tight. The armor that had deflected blades now betrayed him. The flexible leather at the throat yielded to the pressure, cutting off his air. The demon moved behind him, tightening the wire with patient strength. The assassin thrashed, clawing at the cable, but the demon held firm. Slowly, inexorably, the man dropped to his knees. His struggles weakened, then ceased. The demon listened, waiting for the last faint breath, the final faltering heartbeat. When silence came, he released the garrote and let the body slump to the floor. The room was still. The only sound was the demon's own breathing, harsh and steady. He turned to the orb still blazing overhead. Its light seared his eyes, banishing every shadow. He reached up, tore it from the beam. The heat scorched his gloves, burning his palms. He dropped it to the floor and stamped down. The orb shattered with a sharp explosion, a crack of sound that echoed through the inn. Below, the innkeeper flinched at the noise. She had been curled on her bed, trembling, listening to the chaos above. Now silence fell. Tears streaked her face. She prayed the nightmare was over. Then he appeared. The shadow demon stepped from the darkness beside her wardrobe, his tall figure emerging as though the shadows themselves had birthed him. She screamed, scrambling back across the bed until her head struck the wall. There was nowhere left to run. He advanced, slow and deliberate. His white eyes glowed in the gloom, inhuman and merciless. He reached out, seized her by the throat, and slammed her head against the wall. Her scream died in her throat as she fought for air. He leaned close, his face inches from hers. She saw the eyes, the endless white voids, searching her, judging her. 10 seconds passed, an eternity. Then, without warning, he released her. She collapsed onto the bed, gasping, clutching her throat. Her heart hammered in her chest. When she looked up again, the eyes had changed. The white voids were gone, replaced by deep hazel. The predator's stance softened. Kai stood before her once more. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. He saw the terror in her face and knew there was nothing he could say to ease it. He turned away, leaving her trembling on the bed. Back in his room, he surveyed the wreckage. The sparse furniture had been reduced to splinters. The floor was littered with debris. In the center lay the assassin's body. Kai rolled him over, studying the armor. It gleamed even in death, every plate flawless. If the man were propped in the village square, the locals would mistake him for a statue. He found the latches on the mask and released them. The face beneath was as unsettling as the mask. Pale, almost luminous, features too perfect to be natural. Was it reconstruction? Genetic manipulation? Kai could not tell. The skin was smooth, unblemished, untouched by sun or age. It was the face of something not quite human. He searched the armor, fingers probing for clues. In a pouch at the back he found jewels, rare and valuable. A folded scrap of paper with coordinates. His coordinates, the path he had taken to Velrath. And a picture. His picture. A bounty hunter. Sent for him. The thought chilled him. In all his years as the shadow demon, he had been the hunter, never the hunted. Who had ordered this? Who had the power, the knowledge to send such a killer after him? He found one more item. A Taliesin portal key. Useful. Dangerous. He pocketed it. He sat back, staring at the body. The armor was unlike anything he had seen. The jewels, the key, the coordinates, all pointed to an enemy with reach and resources. Someone wanted him dead. It was time to move on. If one hunter had come, others might follow. He stripped the body of its armor, stacking the pieces neatly in the corner. There was no champion's mark on his body. The metal was valuable, worth a fortune. He placed the jewels on top. When he turned, the innkeeper was in the doorway. She stared at the pile, eyes wide. "Please don't worry," Kai said. "I'm almost done. You'll never see me again. Sell the armor and jewels. They'll pay for repairs." She looked at the pile. It was enough to buy not just repairs, but a chain of inns. Her voice was timid. "What of the body?" Kai glanced down at the corpse. "Turn off the lights." She obeyed. Darkness filled the room. Kai placed his hand on the chest of the body. The shadows stirred, swallowing the corpse. It sank into the floor, vanishing into the abyss. "It's in the demon realm now," Kai said. "They won't like it, but it will never be found." He gathered his things, walked past her, and left the inn. Thank you for listening. This has been The Shadow Demon Velrathran Bounty, written by S. Baggley. But the shadows have only just begun to stir. Coming in 2026, The Shadow Demon Broken Prophecy, the first full-length novel in the Shadow Demon saga.